pastor of Village Parkway Baptist Church in San Antonio, Pastor Branson, if you'll come up, and also Pastor Hernan Castaño. You may have recalled that back in a few years ago that we had pastors who had their sermons subpoenaed. And Pastor Hernan Castaño in Houston was one of those pastors. You'll come up. And also we have Rob and Shiloh to talk about the privacy issue. You're going to want to see this panel. As they're walking up, if you want to grab a drink or tacos, they're in the back. But this is going to be an interesting panel. And I would love for them to go ahead and come up. We'll get situated. Okay. And I'm going to yield the floor to the excellent and qualified and capable and the leader, leading lady in Texas, Nicole Hutchins.
Thank you, Jonathan. How are y'all doing this morning? Just checking in, making sure you're still awake. Is the coffee kicking in yet? We're so excited to have this panel, and I can personally say, and that's why I love the work I do. I get to work with amazing people here, and we wanted to have a panel on stories from the front lines. You know, sometimes I think as conservatives, we forget about the stories. We're really good at talking about the numbers and the facts and the statistics, but we have to understand why we do what we do. And that's why those stories are so important. So I want to introduce first Rob. Rob is a father in the Dripping Springs area, and he travels internationally. He's worked on business issues and has become a dear friend. And his daughter Shiloh, some of y'all may recognize Shiloh. Shiloh is a student in Dripping Springs, and we came in contact with them when the Dripping Springs School Board began allowing boys into girls' restrooms without talking to dads like Rob, and without any parents in the school district. And so Rob and Shiloh very bravely stood up at their school board meetings, and in a very Christ-like manner explained to the school board and to their community of why they thought, hey, we love everyone, but violating someone's privacy, especially young girls, is not a good idea. So please give it up for Rob and Shiloh. And then we have Pastor Steve Branson, who's the pastor of Village Parkway Baptist Church. And just so commend the work he's done, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. He went national and has received awards from the Family Research Council because of his advocacy. But you want to talk about a pastor who has stood up, because sometimes, as you'll see in a minute, sometimes it's the pastors that have to stand up and then for their own beliefs. But we also need pastors who are going to be willing to stand up for those in their congregation. And that's what Pastor Steve Branson has done. So give it up for Pastor Branson. And then Pastor Hernan Castaño, as Jonathan was saying, during, many of you know the Houston Prop 1 ordinance that went through, the HERO ordinance, that the mayor pushed through. In the midst of all of that, you had Houstonians who stood up and said, it's not okay for the mayor to pass this ordinance. We're not going to allow men into our women's restrooms. And there were pastors who stood up for the truth and began to preach the truth from the pulpit. A novel idea. But what they're called to do, because of his stand, he got attacked by the mayor of Houston, Nice Parker, through a subpoena, where his sermons, text messages, emails, papers, anything to do with the mayor, the ordinance, human sexuality, marriage, all of that was subpoenaed by the mayor of Houston. But Pastor Hernan stood up, and thankfully those subpoenas were dropped, and the ordinance was voted down, 61-39. So I want to start with Rob and Shiloh, with you guys. Can y'all tell us a little bit about why you stood up against your school board and you got up in front of your community to talk about this issue, and eventually to the state legislature, to the state senate? Tell us a little bit about that journey, and why did you decide to stand?
could go into the girls' restrooms, I was shocked, confused, and pretty frustrated. So me and my dad went to a board meeting, and I just spoke my heart and told him that that's not okay, and that I don't think that's okay, and it would make me very uncomfortable and awkward if a boy was to go into a girls' restroom and a locker room, and so I just spoke my heart.
To be honest, I was rather surprised that in Dripping Springs this was going to be something that was going to be part of our day. And as people started talking, it seemed to be both very political, but it also seemed very close to our heart, that these are people in our community, on both sides. And so as we approached this conversation, we thought, how can we love the people around us, even if they're in opposition? How can we speak truth? Because oftentimes, people that want to do the right thing, they're a little uncomfortable with confrontation. And I also wanted to have that discussion with our kids. And so my son Judah and my daughter Shiloh, we started talking to them as a family. And I was a little frustrated that the school didn't let us know anything about this. I was very frustrated that I was having transgender conversations with young kids because I thought that this is something that we were forced into at a speed that left us rather surprised. But the end result was something very positive. I felt like we could take a stand. I asked Shiloh what her thoughts were. She shared her thoughts, and I said, do you want to speak? And with overflow rooms full and video cameras going, and politicians and people with different views and people in the community, all of us came together, and an awesome young lady stood and said, hey, this isn't right, and I'm not comfortable, and the whole room stopped. And it really gave credence to when people speak truth, and when it's from the heart, and when it's done in the right way, it can really have a positive impact. And so that, with Texas Values Help, that gave us an opportunity to also speak at a hearing and just talk. And the same thing happened. You have this big crowd, and you have state representatives and everybody up front. And when Shiloh leaned into the microphone, everybody got kind of quiet. And it brought that topic to a very important place. What is it like for our children to be pushed into a situation that they're not comfortable with?
So let's give it up for Rob. For me, even working in this field all the time, to see a young lady be willing to stand, if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what does. And if that doesn't instill courage in you, I don't know what else does. If Shiloh can stand, then so can we.
Amen.
Amen. Pastor Steve Branson, a few years ago, I remember as the story was breaking, there was someone in your congregation that was being attacked because of his beliefs on marriage. And you were the one who stood up and was helped to be a voice for Master Sergeant Monk. Can you tell us that story?
In fact, it's 5 years ago right now. In fact, 5 years ago today, we were in the hot seat like you cannot imagine. I had hit July, 1st of July, and I was turning 60 pretty soon. I told my wife, I got about 4 or 5 more years, I'm going to retire, I'm going to ride my bike, I love a bicycle, and I got 8 grandkids, I'm going to play with grandkids and just enjoy the last few years, not knowing that life would turn totally upside down in the weeks that followed thereafter. I'd already been battling all the pastors in San Antonio against Mayor Castro on the bathroom ordinance that we had before y'all had it, and we lost. So they always say, remember the Alamo when they won. San Antonio always loses and Houston always wins. But anyway, because of that, I had been on Fox and Friends and other things. I've become the face of San Antonio pastors. It wasn't supposed to be. In fact, Charles Flowers was here yesterday, who was to be our face, but through providence and other things, I became it. Well, it was a Sunday morning in August when Sergeant Philip Monk walked up with tears in his eyes, and he's a warrior's warrior. He's just one of the finest men I've ever known. Bob Farrar's with me. Bob, you work for Bob. He's one of the great men in our military, 20-something years, impeccable service. And he came up to me and said, I've been fired. And I said, well, you can't get fired in the military, but he had been. And it was over a lesbian commander who was going to destroy the career of another airman because of his beliefs. And Sergeant Monk, doing his job, was just protecting that airman. And when he would not agree with her, she'd end up destroying his career. And so I told the sergeant that night, and I called him back after he told me that morning. We talked quite a while. I said, I have 15 seconds of fame. I'll make a phone call for you if you want to fight this. He said, no, you can't fight the military. You lose. There's no way. Well, Connie and I just ride out sunset, and that'll be it. Well, if you got high school boys and you have Bible studies with them, as Philip does, and you teach us on Tuesday morning about courage to your boys, they're going to throw it in your face. And so they turned it around to Philip, and they said at the end of their Bible study, before they went to high school, they said, now, Dad, are you going to do this? You told us to be courageous. So he called me that morning, and so I said, okay, let's do it. So I called Fox News. Again, I had 15 seconds where they would take my call during that time frame. Talked to Todd Starnes. Todd said, hang up. He called Philip, spent quite a time on the phone with Philip. Said to Philip, hang up. Do you have a lawyer? No, hang up. 2 seconds later, phone rings. Kelly Shackelford calls Philip, said, we'll represent you for free. Anyway, about 2 o'clock that afternoon, the story broke, and if you're never involved in these stories, enjoy your solitude and quietness. You would agree, and stuff. You don't go looking for these things, but they start happening, and it exploded. It goes so fast, it's unbelievable. And so Philip couldn't do much talking. Kelly had him kind of muzzled so he wouldn't get too much trouble. And you got to know, Lackland is a hotbed of sexual dysfunction. Long before this story broke, there were girls being raped at a training center there. Guys had gone to prison. What nobody ever knew was Sergeant Monk is the one who broke the story. He's the one who found out what was happening and sent people to jail, literally 20-year prisons because of how they were treating women. So when he got in trouble, Lackland backed off of him and let him hang out to dry. You'd ruined my friend's career, now your career's gone. So I became his voice. And I did like 500 radio programs. I would literally sit at my desk, do LA, New York, Miami, Houston, Midwest, Chicago. I mean, every day, that's what was going on. And it just got bigger and bigger. And then suddenly I became the story more than he did, and we had to put police on duty. It got pretty ugly. I even had a colonel in the Army. I believe he was in the Army. He was from Louisiana. He kept calling office, attacking my secretaries over and over. I quit phone calls and everything because we were getting swamped. I walked in as my secretary, who was an Army veteran, a little bit disabled, so he was the secretary at the church. He took the phone and slammed it down as I walked in. And I said, what are you doing? He told me the phone call. I said, we don't do that. I told you, we don't hang up on anybody. I don't care how bad it is. So if you can't have it, give it to my secretary. So he kept calling back. And so finally, my secretary couldn't even handle it because it was so bad. So I took the call, and he called me, I can't use the words of the preacher, but he called me a blank liar for about 30 minutes over the phone. Over and over, venom like I'd never heard. And so I just sat there and listened. And finally he said, you're nothing one of those blankety blank homophobes. And so I've been waiting for somebody to say that to me. And I said, sir, could you use the word correctly? And it stopped him. He said, I am. I said, no, sir, you switched jobs now. You're in my line of work. Words. And the word homo means same. The word phobia means fear. So you're accusing me of having the same fear you have. Sir, what I need to know now is, what are you scared of? And you're very much right. When you talk right and you keep it quiet and you speak truth. He and I ended up having a very fascinating conversation. I said, you need to know something. My cousin's gay. We go to dinner all the time. I'm not out to destroy people's lives. I'm out to defend the right to freedom and to speak. So this is a long story, the providence of God in so many different ways. Philip lost for the longest. And like probably y'all were looking like y'all were losing for the longest. But he was taking a beating. And there are long nights of the soul. We call them dark nights of the soul. We have what we call the Fellowship of the Suffering. It's the Bakers in Oregon. It's the Florists in Washington. It's Kelvin Cochran and the Benham brothers. We've all met together. We've all been in hotels together. We've talked, shared. The dark nights of the soul is very, very real. But long story short, because of all the radio programs, Tony Perkins was a huge help because I'm out there floundering by myself. I have no training in this. Lions Defending Freedom later gave me training how to handle the media. It was good, but it doesn't help. Nothing else working in the media. But anyway, Tony put me on his program. I was supposed to be on 5 minutes, stayed on 35 minutes. It's still their #1 program ever. Went in the Pentagon. The Pentagon then called AETC headquarters in San Antonio, so we got a preacher causing havoc and making Lackland look bad. No, seriously, the 4-star general then called my office. The 4-star general said, we'll be at your office at 2 o'clock today. Didn't ask for a meeting, told me there would be a meeting. They show up in my office and I got grilled for 3 hours. For 3 hours because I'm a troublemaker. I've never served military. I've pastored military churches my whole life. And so at the end of the meeting, they left. Well, this is interesting. I know this is America, but this is a different experience than anything I've ever had. That afternoon, I got called back. We'll be back tomorrow at 2. So the staff came back the next day. The general was not there that day. Staff walked in and said, the general wants you to know 3 things. He's a follower of Jesus Christ. He's going to clean up Lackland, and you're going to help. So we spent 3 hours talking through what was wrong, because I had a bunch of my men were being run on all kinds of stuff. It was really messed up. It wasn't just Sergeant Monk, it was a lot of stuff. So at the end of the meeting, as he's leaving, Colonel Scheich, I looked at the colonel and said, just a second. And I still don't know why I did this. I want to say God led me to do it, but I don't blame him if it wasn't a smart move. But I said, I want something from the general. And I've had dinner with more generals than most people in the military now because of all this. I got to write the freedom policy, religious freedom policy for the Air Force. Sergeant Monk and I did. We got to do a lot of neat stuff afterwards. But as I said, I want something from him. And the colonel thought I was crazy. What do you want from the general? So I want to sit down meeting. Sergeant Philip Monk, General Ring, in my office, no lawyers, nose, toe-to-toe. I want you to hear his story. If he is guilty, you punish him. And if he's not, I want his career back. Amen. And we got it. The nerve-wracking meeting went 4.5 hours. It was one of the toughest meetings. Philip got grilled. I sat there next to him the whole time. I didn't say a word. I just sat and listened. But he's a great man, a very good man, and he stayed to exactly what happened. And at the end, the Air Force looked at Sergeant Philip Monk and said, son, we did you wrong. Wow. And so he later was honored at Lackland Meritorious Service. We retired him later at Village Parkway itself. General Boykin flew down. We had people from all over the United States come down. And so it was an amazing finish to an interesting story. So,
as I said, this is what happens when you stand up for those who can't speak for themselves. You get meetings with generals. But isn't that just like God? Amen. We do serve a God that does the impossible and that defends us when we can't defend ourselves. So thank you for your stand, Pastor Steve Branson. Pastor Castano, I feel like the stories are they're incredible. But Pastor Castano, you had to defend yourself. You were a band of 5 pastors, a band of brothers. Actually, there was a female pastor among y'all that had been subpoenaed by the mayor of Houston, attacked by the government, their own city government, for simply speaking the truth. So tell us what happened in your story, Pastor Castano.
Thank you. Thank you. Basically, as a pastor, when you have a calling upon your life from the Lord, and you're pastoring a church, you open those doors so that anyone that walks through the doors will be a church. The hungry, those that need clothing, those that are desperate for a change in their life, the addictive young people, whoever, the sinner, anyone that feels they just need the love of the Lord and the change in their lives are welcome to that church. And you expect anyone to walk in that church, and you're there for them because you're representing a higher authority to make a difference in their life with God's Word. But you never expect, although you also welcome any government official to come and listen to the Word and be changed as well, because they also need the Lord. We all need the Lord. But you never expect someone from government to walk through the doors on night, on a Tuesday night, when you're getting ready to teach to your members a Bible class, and pastoring a minority group, you never expect someone to just be waiting at those doors with so many papers and asking for the pastor. And when that lady was there that Tuesday night of the Bible Institute that we have in Houston, and she asked for me, I did stop, I welcomed her, I invited her to come and sit down. I was very blessed to have her with us, and she said, no, you don't understand, I'm here representing the government, and I'm here because I need your signature because you're being subpoenaed. And so you never expect that. And it was just a direct attack against the freedom of speech, the freedom that every pastor, every minister, the church for so long. And I thought at that specific time of those people that have served this great nation, that given their life, that shed their blood in the fields of foreign nations for the liberty and make this country as great as it is. And I thought about them. And I thought about the sacrifice that they have made. I also thought about Jesus, how one time truth was crucified. But truth can only be crucified one time. And he was crucified so many will be set free. And I thought about all that at that time, so as I was signing those papers. And one thing that we did all agree was that we will continue to preach the truth out of the pulpits and outside the walls of the church. Because truth sets people free. And so this was basically the government of the city on behalf of the mayor showing its muscle and trying to silence the voice of the church and telling pastors, regardless of who they're pastoring, regardless of who they are, telling them that they have no right to preach the Bible out of the walls of the church. And so we rose up and thank God for the church in America. Thank God for every believer in America, everyone that understands freedom and that freedom given to us in America, because they stood up, they sent Bibles from all the nations to City Hall. Pastors came from all around. Prayer was called in, and we kept on preaching along with other pastors because we saw it as the attack against the church, an attack against the citizens of Houston. And we kept hearing 200 cities have adopted this new ordinance. And so Houston must adopt this new ordinance. But we also kept hearing a voice from the Lord saying, my word will prevail. And things will be turned around if you just continue to rise up. And so we believed it. And after 18 months, after them trying to actually deny 55,000 signatures, all we needed was 17,000 signatures. The secretary of the city of Houston, who had been there for 46 years, actually validated those 17,000 signatures. What did the mayor and the attorney of the city did? They came in and they said, no, secretary, you don't have the right to do that. The signatures are invalid. And so she denied the citizens of Houston the right to vote. So I'm telling you, they will rise up, they will deny your rights, they will not stop. As a matter of fact, they will keep coming. And I am just blessed to be a part of so many pastors and people like you that understand that we must just keep rising and speaking out the truth and not be silent nor be intimidated, because it will keep coming. But as long as we stand united, we will prevail. We will prevail. 3 days ago, I went to see the mayor of the city of Houston now, the different mayors, Sylvester Turner. And I went there with one other pastor that was subpoenaed with me, David Welch, and 2 other pastors from the city of Houston. We asked him directly at that table, will you ever bring back Hero again to the city of Houston? He wouldn't deny it. And as a matter of fact, he said, we are a city of diversity, and actually what he was saying is, I'm going to bring it back. So, I am really touched in my spirit, because when we went through the sacrifice of my wife, the sacrifice of my church members, and all the pastors and the people of Houston, 66%, as you said, Nicole, they denied the zero ordinance, and yet we have people like this current mayor considering to bring it back. That tells us what kind of warfare we are in, and I'm glad for Texas Values that they are raising a voice here in Austin and throughout the state, because we need to keep the army of the Lord strong and defend those freedom values that we stand for.
But before I do, today is Shiloh's birthday. Shiloh, since it's her birthday, she gets the very last question. Do you want to tell how old you are?
I'm 12.
So Shiloh, if you could tell this entire audience who may be nervous to stand up for what they believe in, what is the one thing you would tell them so that they could have courage like all of you?
Do it anyway, because I was nervous too, and I did it, and it changed a bunch of other girls' lives who probably didn't have the chance to stand up or are too nervous to. And I think that I gave them a chance, and if y'all did the same thing that I did, if y'all stood up, y'all could change so many other lives that they can't change themselves.
Rob, you can add on, and then I know we've got a tight schedule, but please do add on as a follower.
I think it's very easy for us as people to look at our perspective. And we forget about the sovereignty of a holy God who has a long-term, big, huge plan for him to be glorified. And in today's political climate, I see verbal attack, but real persecution is people that are dying for their faith in Syria, Iran, Pakistan. And so for us to stand up, to worship God, and to take a stand for what's godly and right, and to use our voice in a respectful manner and trust that God is going to use that, I think it's important. It puts things in perspective because we get fearful, but when we have a powerful, almighty God that actually we do know the ending, we can trust in that. So I want to encourage us to have faith in Him and trust in Him, and He uses simple people like us for His name to be glorified and for His ways to be accomplished.
Amen.